Welcome to another riveting edition of Risk and Return. My name is Charlie Gasparino. I am here with my partner in crime and news reporting, Bob Sloan from S3 Partners, the daddy of data. We do have some good data coming up, but we would be burying the lead if we didn't get to some of the crazy stories that I've been working on, and because they're all over the post right now, and they're making national news. And let's start with Jimmy Kimmel. This is funny. This normally is not a business story, but it is, and I'm going to unpack why. Jimmy Kimmel, the late night comedian, runs on ABC. He was suspended by the network and its affiliate networks, and this is where it gets interesting. After making some pretty rude comments about Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist who was assassinated recently, we're not going to dignify exactly what he said. Just say they were noxious comments. But here's where they became like not just noxious, but probably dumb from a business standpoint. ABC and one of the top broadcasters that carry its affiliate feeds, a company called Nexstar. They're both involved in all sorts of business before the FCC right now, the Federal Communications Commission, whose chairman, his name is Brendan Carr, who is a conservative activist. And he is taking a wide interpretation of the fairness doctrine of the FCC licensing that you have to, if you run on local news, not cable, but if you provide local news, you have to be fair and balanced and in the public interest. And what he's saying is comments like Jimmy Kimmel made about Kirk, as a comedian, yes, but still political commentary and some of the far left stuff that he espouses is not in the public interest. And from what I understand, Nexstar, which is one of the major affiliates of this, in terms of runs a broadcast channel that runs as a bunch of ABC affiliates, meaning they license the program from ABC on their stations across the country, including Jimmy Kimmel Live. And ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel over these comments. Broke Thursday night. And the story that I broke on Friday was why it probably happened. And again, it's this business angle. ABC has a ton of approvals that are going before Brendan Carr at the FCC. I mean, I think they even want to do a deal with the NFL, so that needs an FCC approval. They have local broadcast licensing they need approval for. Nexstar, on the other hand, has a $6.2 billion deal to buy Tegna, another local broadcaster, which, by the way, the number doesn't sound big. But if you look at the amount of stations that they're going to control, it's like 90 stations across the country. Sometimes two stations in one market, three stations in one market. It's pretty huge. And to get this thing through, you need the FCC approval. So remember, there's a huge business reason why Jimmy Kimmel was suspended. The rumor I hear is he's done. Okay, it's like he might be out. Like, remember Colbert when they booted him for some of the same reasons. Let's face it. From CBS, they gave him a year to play around on a show until his contract's over. I don't think they're going to do that with Kimmel. I think he's going to go now. Now, what is it, because they're giving in to Trump? Yeah, somewhat, but also it's kind of an also convenient excuse, Bob. Do you know anybody that makes like 20 million a year and loses like 40 million a year?
Yeah, the ones that go out of business.
but that's the whole thing. I mean, but this was like saying, "Oh, you got to keep them around." I mean, like, think about this. In our business, what we do. I mean, I cover business. You're an entrepreneur. You create a business. When was the last time you heard of that? That is like an anomaly. I mean, the greatest anomaly of all time is this whole notion of these late night comedians who run around doing all this political agitprop. Half the country at least hates it. They lose a ton of money, yet somehow they think they have a First Amendment right to keep spewing this garbage. I'm a little bit, as a First Amendment absolutist, I am a little bit worried. But remember, the First Amendment covers you for not going to jail. You don't keep a job because of the First Amendment. There's no First Amendment right to a job, and there's no First Amendment right to an FCC broadcast license that doesn't cover cable. Like, can't do this to Fox. It only covers local broadcasting. That's the way it was set up. That it has to be in the public public interest. And Brendan Carr has taken a wide interpretation of this. Why don't you react to that as a guy who's not in the business?
You know what, Charlie, here's what I think. I think the number you just said really struck home with me is that Nexstar is going to pay, close to $7 billion, and Paramount went for eight. Was it? I think you said 6.2 versus eight,
Eight. No, eight. You're right. Eight.
right? 8 billion. So it kind of shows you the influence you have on what's being broadcast versus the content, right?
That's
So
true.
true, right? So they still have a very, very, very strong voice. And it doesn't surprise me that they would go and say, hey, the show probably costs us, God knows, a couple $100 million a year to produce. And then if the advertisers don't want it and our affiliates don't want it, uh, it's not that illogical decision, right? It's a
It's
noisy
it's
decision.
it's
But
an
it's a
easy.
logical decision, right?
It's totally logical, and you can blame it on Trump in a way. Oh, he's going to kill us if we don't. But it's really, I bet you they're thanking the good Lord they could get rid of him. They're like,
You
this is like perfect. Okay, let's blame it on Trump and
Do you think
let's get
do
rid
you
of this
think
albatross.
Jimmy Kimmel and Steve Colbert, do you think it actually ever crossed their minds that, wow, Trump won, so my job is at risk? You think it ever occurred to them? I bet you it didn't.
They're in a bubble, Bob, and I see this bubble because I'm in the mainstream media in many ways, and in all ways. And I see my colleagues that they really think that Trump is an existential threat to democracy. And I'm a little different because I converse with you and all our crew, which we're very. I mean, let's face it, we're free thinkers. We're all over the place. We're not like rapidly conservative. Everybody that knows us knows that. But we are free thinkers, and we're not in that bubble. When you go to that Hollywood bubble, when I venture to LA, when I do occasionally, when I do sit down with like really liberal people on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, this bubble is unbelievable. Trump is this, that. I mean, it's and people that support him are this and that. Charlie Kirk, by extension, was this and that. And it's and they're part of the I think they're part of the dialogue. Like I don't want to like pin his assassination on Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not saying that, but that sort of noxious dialogue. Trump's a Nazi. Charlie Kirk is a Nazi. Charlie Kirk was so far from a Nazi. Trump is so far from a Nazi. Anything about National Socialism and Hitler's rise. I mean, it's not even close. It's stupid. It's a stupid conversation. Yet we keep having it. Does Trump do some crazy shit? Yeah. Does he do stuff that is checked by the checks and balances of our Constitution? Absolutely. By the way, last I checked, Barack Obama. I
He
think
issued more executive orders than anyone.
yeah.
What's
And by the
amazing
way, he
about Trump?
spied on a journalist once. He spied on my ex-colleague James
Exactly.
Rosen, who was
So
doing stuff.
what's crazy to me is that, you know, the first time around I said, oh, he's not a serious person. Trump's not a serious person. Right? The second time around, he obviously learned a lot because he is implementing his policies at light speed,
And he's pretty
knows how
serious
to
too.
do it, and he's doing it. And so the narrative keeps shifting from, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, he's a danger, and yet he's implementing all these policies and through executive order and through Congress. And he's actually getting stuff done. So, look, whether you agree with it or not, he is an instrument that will implement his agenda. And he doesn't lie about that. He
And
tells you what he's going to do and he does it.
right. I want to switch topics a little bit now, Bob, because we want to get to your data, since you're the
Sure.
daddy of data,
Right.
and just one more turn of the screw, because this is going to be a big story in the days ahead, particularly tomorrow. Tomorrow, particularly as I shouldn't say tomorrow, we air on Friday. On Friday, President Xi Jinping of China and Trump are going to take a huge step forward in their trade negotiations. And part of that step forward is something that I never thought would, make international news and stop the presses around the world. It's over TikTok. Yeah. Now,
Well,
I'm sure you're on TikTok now, Monique. You're not, but I am because I write about it. But it's a short video app. It's hugely popular with kids. It's run by a Chinese company called ByteDance. Trump initially, and after that, a lot of people in Congress believed it was a way to spy on Americans. Filled kids, it filled our youth of America with anti-American propaganda. You name it. Trump wanted it banned. Congress, even when he was out of office, pushed for a ban. Joe Biden signed it into law. It was a bipartisan legislation. It went before the Supreme Court. They approved the ban. And now Trump believes because TikTok, he thinks got him elected because a lot of youth voted for him. And I think the aforementioned late great Charlie Kirk used TikTok for his get out the vote drives on Turning Point USA. Trump wants to save it now, and they're in the throes of creating a deal that would save it. And tomorrow we're going to get some, and Friday we're going to get some more details, probably after our podcast hits. So, but here are some of the details I hear. It's going to be owned majority by American investors. The algorithm is going to be housed in Oracle's cloud. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The algorithm is the all important thing. It's the secret sauce of this thing. From what sources are telling me, is that there's a plan to change that algorithm or to reinvent it in a way that totally cuts out the Chinese. It's the Chinese algorithm that they basically gave us to replicate and tweak and change and maybe rewrite the whole thing into a separate algorithm. And that was one of the big hookups. Like, do they give us the algorithm and how we can store it and tweak it so we can make sure the Chinese aren't spying on us still? That's going to be key. And I would say watch exactly how they frame that. It's very political. It's really politically dicey because the Chinese think it's their algorithm, which it is. Trump has to deal with Congress. There's a law. If the algorithm still provides a backdoor into China, well, then there's a violation of that law. No matter how many times he extends this executive order, you can get a lawsuit. I mean, you can get something. If you got a Democratic president in and he says, well, I'm going to re-implement this law, well, guess what happens? All this private investors that now is interpreted as violating law, they're on the hook for like gazillions of dollars in damages for keeping an illegal, keeping a business afloat that violates this legislation. So watch how this all unfurls. It'll unfurl tomorrow. I've been at the Post. I've been ahead of it. One other controversial thing is, on paper, it might look like the Chinese still own 90% of it because all the big companies, apparently, all the big investors, the Susquehannas, the KKRs, General Atlantic, they hold ByteDance shares, right? They're
Yes.
investors in the company now. They're the big U.S. investors. They're going to roll those shares into the new company. They don't want to sell them because it would be a taxable event. So on paper, it's going to look like the shareholders are ByteDance, aka the Chinese, controlling the company. So watch that. That'll be interesting. Let's see how Congress reacts to this. I think the next story here is how Congress reacts to this whole structure. Do they buy the rolling over the shares? Do they trust the algorithm being managed and tweaked and possibly changed by Oracle? We should point out that Larry Ellison of Oracle is a good friend of President Trump's. Oracle is going to have a major sort of equity stake in this as well. They're going to make a lot of money off this. They're going to run the cloud and have the equity stake. The new company could be worth anywhere between 30 and 50 billion based on the various metrics. I think TikTok has 300 billion. Um, I don't know the math, but if you look at the metrics of how many users are in the U.S., 172 million, right? So you get that valuation of around 30 to 50 billion, and so it's going to be a deal. A lot of people want in on it because this thing makes money. I mean, it throws off a lot of cash. I didn't know this, but small businesses do a lot of stuff on TikTok. My
Oh,
barber is on TikTok, and he said he got a ton of customers when he did somebody came in and did a
so what do
TikTok.
you think this does? Does this happen in time to influence the New York City mayoral race? Because Mondani is a TikTok genius, right?
Yeah,
I don't want to say that because I think it's pretty clear how I feel about his election prospects.
right.
But he has done something quite remarkable, and he's made influencing candidate eligible. He's not your traditional candidate.
I don't
He's
think
an
it's going to impact it because I think he's going to keep being able to do it. And I
Well,
mean,
what
that's
happens if the algorithm gets tweaked and he's not as amplified as before? Like what happened with Trump on Twitter?
although
They threw him off.
okay, if
They
that's
threw
the
him off.
case, right? I don't think that will be the case, but if that's the case, I think the algorithm will be tweaked so that the Chinese can't like spy. But I think if that's the case, it's gonna take a while for them to tweak this thing. It's not that easy. You're gonna have to, it's a lot of you have to
Sure.
transfer all these users to this new thing. It's gonna be somewhat complicated. I mean, you could do it. We do have AI for a reason. It helps with stuff like this, but uh, but I don't think it'll be done in time for November 5th to ruin his chances. Unfortunately, of being mayor. Unfortunately, I think Zohan Mandami is going to be mayor of New York City, but I could be wrong.
Well, it's interesting. I read a stat this morning about that, and it said that yes, he's locked up 500,000 votes, but he hasn't been gaining. So even with the
That's
rumors,
true. That's
right, he
absolutely
hasn't
true.
been gaining. Adams hasn't drawn, even with Adams not dropping out yet, even with Cuomo, kind of carrying the burden of two other candidates that are staying in until they won't. It's interesting that you would figure with 1.5 million voters on average, he could collect. If he collects 200,000 more votes, he wins. The stat I read, it was by McLaughlin, actually, the survey, which is a pretty reputable firm.
I met him. He's a really smart guy, Mr. McLaughlin. Yeah.
He's a really, really reputable firm. They do a lot of things on Wall
Right.
Street and helping people run their businesses. If he's only got 550 to 600,000 votes today, it's a horse race. If the donor class can get off its back and start playing some hardball, because that's what needs to happen. You
Yeah.
know, it really does. And I'm a little surprised at the meekness of the opinion by very, 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 very top business leaders. I think they owe it to the
I'm
city.
not. They're most of them are weak kneed and sellouts, and they're gonna try to cozy up to him because they think they can influence him. By the way, they might be able to influence him around the edges, but here's what's going to happen: New York City will begin. It's been on a descent, pretty rapid, like a moderately rapid descent into oblivion, particularly economically. For now, the last, I would say, 15 years since Bill De Blasio was mayor, going through the pandemic made it worse. I think once he gets in there, it'll accelerate dramatically. Bob, I want to get to
One
your.
last comment on
Okay.
that. One last
Okay.
comment on Donnie, which is, he runs around and he says, "Oh, well, I'm just raising your taxes 2%."
No, that's it. It's already up the highest in the world, but
But
okay.
but what no one in either party or will call, I guess Cuomo would have to run as an independent. Um, no one says, "Oh, wait a minute, let's see. State and city now is like, a lot. If I add 2% more to that, plus the four, he's by the way, wants to put a corporate tax up to 11. So someone like me, who's already paying 4% off the top, then you got to play state and city. You raise the 4% revenue corporate tax to 10, 11. That comes off the top. Then it's your income. You raise that by 2%. The spread. Now you're in the 20, you're paying 25% if you own your own business.
I know. By the way, the
It's
numbers.
crazy.
The numbers of living in New York just don't work, and I
It
don't
don't
think he
work.
understands that people like you and I can move, and we do have
Crazy.
money, and I'm not saying we're like Jeff Bezos rich, but the Jeff Bezos rich people can't pay all the bills. They need people like you and I, entrepreneurs, people with modest incomes, decent, good incomes that pay the most of the taxes. Jeff Bezos, probably, I don't know, I don't know where he lives, but I'm sure it's, some place with a very low corporate tax rate, and he could
Of
fly
course.
anywhere in the world, right? And he
That's
takes a
exactly
lot of his earnings and capital gains, and so what does it matter? So he can own an apartment in New York for whenever he wants to show up. But for most people, it's just cheaper to leave, or or you have to listen to Bob's stock picks to make some money, which I want to get into right now in the remaining time we have left. Because believe it or not, I have to work. I have many day jobs here, Bob, as you do.
we all wear a lot of hats. So
What
we all wear a lot of hats. There's no question about that.
do you got going this week? What does the data tell
Well,
us?
uh, yeah. So a couple of things. We want to revisit Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel is a very interesting stock because the they announced earnings which really disappointed people. The stock was down on this, yesterday. It was down 9% after hours. And when we put this note together, it was down almost 3.5% intraday today. The short interest in the stock has climbed to almost 25% of the float.
Right.
So it's the highest in over a year. And it leaves the stock in what we call battleground territory, where the active longs and the shorts are
Right.
almost
And we've talked about
very.
that. It could go either way, and it takes a push either way.
That's right. So we see a lot of increase in short selling. There's just been people are leaning into this trade because they think the stock has further to go down. So that also goes same true for Live Nation, which Live Nation, they're ticket seller and et cetera. They do a lot of different things in the entertainment business,
Sure.
concerts, et cetera. It has a $38 billion market cap, and the the short sellers are actually sitting on about $700 million in losses year to date. And so
Really?
this stock is really flashing squeeze risk,
Live
squeeze risk,
Nation.
Live Nation.
And what is it flashing on Cracker Barrel? Undetermined?
No, it's just more, it's just bearish sentiment, right? So you have long and short more or less equal. It's about 1.2, slightly skewed long.
So an event, some sort of stupid story that Charlie Gasparino writes could push it in either
Oh,
direction.
100%,
Okay.
100%. 100% that any news event, this stock is very sensitive right now. It moves based on not only earnings but sentiment, and you're seeing that the way the stock is set up, it's ripe for what we call battleground, where you have $1 long almost equals $1 short, and it all needs is a little bit of downside pressure, and you'll see that will probably the shorts are going to make some money there. Live Nation, we've seen the short interest jump from 8% to about 12.5%, and the percentage of short, the percentage of float, short as a percentage of float, it's an all-time high. And this stock has been rising up and up and up and up and up in our crowded score and our squeeze score, and it's over 70, score of about 70. Now, on average, across our entire business and all the data, all the 62,000 securities we cover, 33 is the average.
Huh.
So this stock is flashing. There's a chance here that you'll see a squeeze on this stock.
All right. Live Nation.
But
Squeezable. Isn't that what you say? What do you call it?
squeezable.
I thought you said
Squeezable.
squeezy.
No, well, it's squeezy, squeezable. They're both the same things,
All right. So we're
But
trying to decipher the language of Bob Sloan and S3. Squeezable could be squeezy, just it could be short squeezed.
that's right,
Everybody.
which would make the short sellers squeezy. So that's why we call it squeezy. So anyway,
All right. I
you
like
got it right.
squeezy. Um,
And
anything else?
yeah, last one, Nvidia. Everyone loves to talk about Nvidia.
I know
It
that's I was
actually,
gonna say. By the way, why isn't it Nvidia instead of Nvidia?
good question.
Well, that's for another show.
We need a direct line.
Get Jensen on, all right, to
You
explain
get
that.
Jensen on, have him explain that one. We do a lot of things. I have no idea. But it overtook Apple as the largest short by notional, which is interesting.
Why is
Uh,
Apple larger? Is it just because it's big, or is people?
it's just big.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for a long time, Nvidia was the largest short in the marketplace by notional, and then it dropped, and now it's back higher again. And so, what we think when we see, this particularly Nvidia doing that, that's really signifying that the market is climbing a wall of worry.
I think let's just be clear here. I think Apple was because of its size, not because people were worried inherently about the stock and the future
I
of the
don't think
company.
they're worried about Nvidia either. That's my point. My
I think
point
there's
is,
a little bit. You don't think there's a little bit?
we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and there were guys out there saying he needs all the power and he can't get
Yeah, I
it.
know. I did a
Blah,
story
blah,
on
blah.
it. Yeah.
This has nothing to do with that. Nvidia is not 35 billion dollars of short interest because everybody hates the stock.
Okay.
What they're trying to do, Nvidia is such a large percentage of every single index that if you short Nvidia, basically you're shorting the index. So the market's been on a tear, and then I think Nvidia more than anything else, the stock is just used for hedging purposes. It's a way
So
to
it's the new Apple for traders.
yeah. But it always has been, right? And that was the interesting thing, is that for about 4 or 5 months, it wasn't the largest short. A lot of people covered, and Apple a lot of people didn't increase their short in Apple, but they've increased their short in Nvidia by a lot.
Well, that's my
And
point. Is it the new Apple for hedging the markets and
it went like this: Nvidia was the hedge, then Apple was the hedge, now Nvidia is the hedge.
there you go. That's amazing, and that's the S3 data.
That's our data, yeah. So it's we just watch that. You see that rise in short interest go very, very high, even higher, let's say 40 billion. I think it's like a VIX gauge. It's telling you, hey, we're not really comfortable with the levels here. We need to take some chips off the table. What's the cheapest way we can hedge the market?
Well, there's a
Sure.
lot of macroeconomic indicators. The Fed only cut rates 25 basis points, as you know. We had a semi-hot inflation number. Job growth is slowing. The markets go ripped on initially on the 25 basis point. Then they listened to what Powell said, and they flattened out. So there's listen. Trump's economic policies are pro growth, and this all could equal out in his favor. But you could see some worries, and this is why you have us here trying to every day trying to give you the latest on how this stuff is interpreted. We can only give you an interpretation. We can't tell you where it's going. If I could predict the future, Bob, well, I'd be running S3 data.
No, you'd be buying TikTok.
I would be buying. That's right. I'd be richer than Larry Ellison, right? Who is like almost the richest guy in the world now because of AI. But
Well, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, but a couple other things we've seen that are pretty interesting. The healthcare sector ETF XLV, a lot of shorts in that particular ETF.
why is that?
And well, it's interesting. It's the worst performing sector in any index is healthcare.
Maybe they
There's
think
100.
Trump's going to crack down on it.
Well, that's for
Pharmaceuticals,
sure,
something
right? I
like
think
that.
I think we do import all of our. Look, I take certain things every day. You probably take certain things every day,
Unfortunately, yes.
and they're all manufactured overseas. And so Trump, I think, rightly is saying, "Hey, we can't have people have leverage over the citizenry. We need they can
Right.
be in business, but we have to have our own means of production."
And he wants to cut back on pharmaceutical advertising, and so there is going to be increased regulation here.
Yep. So people are really leaning into that. So you've seen sector short interest in the healthcare sector. It went from 6.4% of the float in January to about 8.3 percent by now mid September, and that's it represents 156 billion dollars in notional shorts. It's a lot, and it's amongst all sectors. You have 27 stocks in the sector that have a squeeze score above 80.
Oh, squeezy.
So, right. So, this is a really interesting battleground sector to watch because it's most vulnerable to regulation, it's most vulnerable to licensing, and it's most vulnerable to national security.
Okay, so let's go over before we wrap things up here. Cracker Barrel. Keep an
Cracker
eye on
Barrel
that.
probably shorts are going to win.
Live
That's
Nation.
Live Nation. I would probably say shorts are going to win.
Nvidia.
Nvidia is just an interesting market technical analysis because it's telling you the market's worried. It's saying, "Wow, this is
Might
the
be
market's
overdone.
really it's on go. Everybody's all in, and we're
Right.
worried." And
And
then
shorting,
healthcare,
and for all the reasons, and shorting the healthcare sector in the face of regulation coming.
correct.
All right,
That's what we got this week, Charlie.
and you're out there, and where are you
Well,
again? You're over.
I'm actually on a bit of a pilgrimage, as I told you. My father was a great angler, was very world famous, and I'm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I go on this trip every year. It
Oh,
brings me
nice.
close to him. That's why I do this trip.
That's
He's no
nice.
longer with us, and yeah, I fish on this boat called the Doubleheader with a great captain named Les Gallagher. He's a wonderful guy, and I do it every year. But I came off the water for you, and
For our
I hooked
for
into
our
a. I know I
viewers,
hooked into. I did.
for our viewers.
I hooked into a 550-pound blue marlin, landed it, and I
Well,
said, "Charlie Gasparino wants me back at the dock. This we have to go do."
and I got to end this podcast for Larry Kudlow, believe it. So,
Oh, why don't we have him on?
we will very shortly. I'll make that happen. Bob, it was great seeing you.
All
We'll
right.
be back next week. This is Charlie Gasparino signing off with my partner in crime and data, Bob Sloan. Risk and return. See you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.